This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic. All right, we're continuing in our graphing of trig functions, and on this video we're going to graph this function right here. All right, so we've got y equals sine of 2x minus 3. State the period, amplitude, and any vertical shift, and graph. All right, so let's write out what we do know. How will we get the period? Well, there were a couple ways of getting the period. One was just using the formula. Remember, the period is 2 pi divided by the coefficient of x. All right, so dividing by 2, this tells us that our period is pi. Right, so that's the formula for getting the period. Now, sine usually goes from 0 to 2 pi. What it's saying, it's going to go from 0 to pi. So when we are choosing our x coordinates, right, we've got the sine of 2x minus 3, right? We also want to figure out what that will be. We know normally we're going from 0 to 2 pi, so if you just think about it for a minute again, here's 0, you want to end up at pi for this function. So you're going to have 3 other places in the middle, right? So this is a fourth of the way to pi, and then another fourth of the way, and another fourth of the way, and then another fourth of the way. So we're going to start off with 0, as usual, right, at 0, but now we're going to have to add a fourth of the way to pi. Well, a fourth of pi is pi over 4. So to get the next one, we would add pi over 4 again. That'll give us 2 pi over 4, which of course is the same as pi over 2. I'm just writing them with the same denominator. And then the next place will be 3 pi over 4, right? You just add pi over 4 again. And finally, you add 4 pi over 4, which is just pi. It's up to you whether you want to write these with common denominators or not. I think it's easier to think of them that way. So those are going to be our key points on the x-axis. Now remember, the usual numbers we remember for just y equals sine x, when we just have x and sine x, are 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi, right? So notice all of these are actually half of what you see over there. Basically, that's this dividing by 2 part over here. And what about the, what will the y values change from? So usually it goes 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. What happens this time? Well, if it was just the sine of 2x, since we changed our x values, we would have just been able to keep 0, 1, 0, and negative 1. But this minus 3 means I'm going to have to subtract 3 from all those y values. Okay? So I'm going to have to do, instead of 0, 1, 0, negative 1, and 0, I'm going to have to subtract 3 from each of these. Now, you don't have to show that. You could do that in your head if you want. 0 minus 3. It's just negative 3. This will be negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and negative 3. So our ordered pairs will be 0, negative 3, pi over 4, negative 2, 2 pi over 4, negative 3, 3 pi over 4, negative 4, and pi negative 3. So let's graph those. Key points. So we are going between 0 to pi to get one cycle. I'll just go ahead and also go over here to negative pi. And what about my y coordinates? It's ranging between negative 4 and negative 2. So I've got to make sure I at least have space to go down here to negative 4. And so we've got our x and y axis labeled, which is very important. And now let's go ahead and plug in these ordered pairs. So we have 0, negative 3. And we have pi over 4, negative 2. So that'll be, whoops. I don't know why this does this, sorry. So we have pi over 4, negative 2. That would be right here. We've got pi over 2, negative 3. So now remember, pi over 2 is the same as 2 pi over 4, right? So we're going down. You can see what's going on. Remember, it goes up first, then it starts coming down. Then we've got 3 pi over 4 and negative 4. And we've got pi negative 3, and you can see your cycle here. Now, of course, if you kept going, it would be down here, and back up, and down. So if you wanted to see 2 periods, and then sketch it nicely so it looks nice and curved, and put arrows at the end so it shows that you know this really cycles and goes on and on and on. That's not a perfect looking sketch there, but I hope you get the idea. So if you were asked what the 5 key points are, you could write those as ordered pairs: 0, negative 3, pi over 4, negative 2, etc. Sometimes you're asked to label them right on the graph. So for instance, if you were going to label this point here, that's the 3 pi over 4, negative 4. It gets kind of crowded though. Okay. You could also label the x coordinates right here. This is pi over 4. This is 2 pi over 4 or pi over 2 if you want to write it so that it doesn't take as much space up, and 3 pi over 4. All right, so that's how we're graphing this. We've got both a period change and we didn't say what the amplitude was, but the amplitude, remember the coefficient of the sine is 1, so the amplitude was easy in this case. The amplitude was still 1. It's the absolute value of the coefficient there. And so the amplitude, you can look at the picture as 1. It's half the bottom, from the very bottom to the very top. The period was pi, and there was a vertical shift. And so that was the other thing we wanted to say. What's the vertical shift? It was down 3 units. So let's just write that down. The vertical shift was down 3 units. Sorry, these aren't all in the same place, just trying to get it all on one place. So we've got the period is pi, amplitude is 1, vertical shift, and here's our graph. This is your Math Gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic.